Some people break down when life gets heavy. Others break open. Something's been shifting inside you, hasn't it? You felt it, not in loud moments, but in quiet ones. The sudden disinterest in chasing, the growing silence between your thoughts. That feeling that something bigger has already taken over, and all you need to do is stop resisting. Let me tell you something they don't teach in schools or temples. When you're truly chosen, your life stops being your own. You are no longer the architect, you become the instrument. Shaolin wisdom doesn't glorify the self, it dissolves it. We train not for control, but for surrender. Not to become powerful, but to become clear enough for power to move through us. In this teaching, I'll show you what it really means to be chosen, not the fantasy, but the ancient truth. We'll go deep into how divine duty activates the moment you align, why chasing success keeps it running, and how stillness, real, anchored stillness, makes it come to you. You'll understand why monks live simple lives but carry a presence that bends the air around them, why richness forever isn't a promise you manifest, it's a current you step into once the ego is gone. Watch this through to the end. Don't rush it. Let the words settle. Something sacred is being remembered inside you. This is Shaolin Soulfire. If you're called to this path, subscribe and walk it with us. There is a kind of hunger that cannot be fed with gold. I've seen men walk into the temple with eyes full of fire, ambition, plans, pride, and I've seen them leave quieter, not because they were defeated, but because something deeper had awakened in them. A different kind of wealth, the kind that can't be spent or stolen. The monks say, he who conquers himself is richer than he who owns the world. At first this sounds poetic, but when you sit with it long enough, when life humbles you enough, it becomes a mirror. You start to see the endless chasing, the way your mind constantly reaches for the next thing, the next person, the next version of yourself, and you realize this isn't living, this is survival wrapped in desire. So we bring it back to the breath. Because the breath doesn't chase, it receives, it arrives, it departs, and it never lies. It anchors you to the only place where power lives. Now, this is where the real training begins, not with swords or sweat, but with presence. With learning to sit with yourself without distraction, to hear your own thoughts without flinching, to face your impulses without obeying them. Most people think richness means accumulation, more things, more control. But the monk knows real richness is peace. A mind that doesn't argue with reality, a heart that doesn't need to be filled, a soul that's already home. And when that happens, when you master the storm inside you, something strange begins to occur. Life starts coming to you, not because you force it, but because you've stopped pushing it away. There's a power in the words from now on, but only if you mean them. In the temple, we are taught not to speak carelessly. Every phrase is a vow. Every breath carries intention, so when a monk says from now on, he isn't making a wish, he's crossing a threshold. The Shaolin path has no space for nostalgia. The past is a shadow, only useful if it teaches. And anxiety, that is breath trapped in the future. Both are distractions. Both pull you out of alignment. Presence is the only gate that opens to truth. There's a lesson we're given in early training. A senior monk will hand a student a cup of water and say, "Hold this, don't spill." At first it seems simple, but hours pass, muscles ache, the student's mind races, and that's the real test. Not the body, but the mind's ability to stay with the moment. Not wander, not escape, just be. Discipline, in this tradition, doesn't mean forcing, it means returning, over and over, to the now, to the breath, to the step you are in. You don't transform your life by fixing the past or predicting the future. You transform it the moment you say enough and mean it. The moment you step out of old patterns, old identities, old fears, and step into this breath, this thought, this silence. When you say from now on, say it like a monk, with presence, with your spine straight and your spirit awake, not to impress anyone, but to mark the moment where your inner world shifts. Because beyond that door, there is no past to mourn, no future to fear. There is only the space where life meets you with open hands. A full cup cannot receive. That's one of the first teachings offered in silence at the temple. A young student arrives with ambition, with questions, with opinions. He's eager to learn, but his mind is already too loud. So before he's taught anything, he's taught to empty. This isn't a punishment, it's preparation. Self-mastery begins with release, not adding more, but removing what clings. The thoughts that begin with "I want," the fears that whisper "I can't," the pride that insists "I deserve." These are the weeds in the garden. they grow fast, and if you don't tend to them daily, they choke out the silence where wisdom grows. Letting go doesn't mean becoming passive. It means becoming available. Available to clarity, to guidance, to something older and wiser than your personal mind. In the old texts, they speak of wu wei, effortless action. This doesn't mean doing nothing. It means that once the ego steps aside, right action flows through you like water through a bamboo pipe. You become the instrument, not the player. That's the paradox. The more you try to control, the heavier the path becomes. But the moment you loosen your grip, when you stop trying to force your way into truth, truth begins to move through you. This is why the monk bows before training, before eating, before speaking, not out of ritual, out of remembrance, to stay empty, to stay open. Because when the cup is empty, it can be filled with something sacred, not desire, not fear, but presence, precision, purpose, and that more than anything is the mark of mastery. There's a kind of silence that isn't empty, it's full. Not with noise, but with presence. Not with answers, but with awareness. In the temple, silence is not a punishment or a rule. It's a path, a sharpening of the senses, a return to the source. Young monks often resist it at first. The quiet feels too loud. Without words, the mind starts to echo. But over time, something shifts. The chatter fades, the need to be heard dissolves, and then the real listening begins. Because the universe doesn't shout, it whispers. It speaks in subtle shifts, in the rhythm of your breath, the weight of a glance, the pause between your thoughts. You miss it when you rush. You miss it when you fill the space with sound. Stillness is a form of respect. It tells the unseen world, I am here, I am ready. True richness never needs to perform. It doesn't dress itself up or demand recognition. It simply is quiet, grounded, unshakable, and the same is true for real power. It's not loud. It doesn't argue. It walks in, and the room adjusts. To train in stillness is to learn restraint. It's to know when not to speak, when not to react, when to let life reveal itself, instead of forcing your will upon it. Some truths only appear in quiet. Some guidance only comes when you stop reaching for it. This is why monks retreat into mountains, why they sit for hours without moving, not to escape the world, but to become tuned to something deeper than the world's noise. You don't have to live in a temple to know this silence. You just have to be brave enough to stop filling it, and patient enough to finally hear what's always been speaking. A straight path isn't always the easiest, but it's always the clearest. In Shaolin training, strength isn't measured only by how long you can hold a stance or how fast your strike lands. Strength is measured in the quiet moments, when no one is watching, when no reward is promised, when you choose integrity over comfort. The old masters would say, you can't cheat the Tao. You can walk beside it or you can walk against it, but you will feel the difference. One brings flow, the other friction. So discipline isn't just about repetition, it's about alignment. You train your body to follow the breath. You train your mind to follow principle. And your spirit, it follows truth. Not opinion, not trend, truth. There's a form of wealth that comes from this kind of life, but it doesn't show up like gold or applause. It shows up as clarity, as protection, as timing that seems impossible to explain. Provision doesn't come to those who manipulate. It comes to those who are prepared, who move in silence, who obey what is right, even when it costs them something. That's the heart of the practice, doing what's right when it's inconvenient, speaking truth when silence would be safer, staying humble when praise tries to inflate you. These are not small things, they are spiritual weights, and each time you lift them, you build something unseen. Eventually, life begins to respond. Doors open without knocking. Help arrives without asking. What looks like luck from the outside is actually alignment on the inside. This is the real work, not just moving with force, but moving with moral clarity. Not just training the body, but training the soul to walk straight even in the dark. That, in the ancient path, is not the end. It's the threshold. Before anything sacred can be born, something false must fall away. This is the way of all true transformation, not through addition, but through surrender, a shedding, a quiet burial of what no longer serves. In Shaolin, they call it dying before you die, not of the body, but of the self that clings, the self that begs for approval, pleads for safety, fears being unseen. That self must go, not in a blaze, not in a breakdown, but in a simple, conscious choice. You feel it when it's time, when the old words no longer fit in your mouth, when the same habits begin to feel heavy, when the people around you start sounding like echoes of a life you've already outgrown. Don't fight it. Don't mourn the mask. Just step out of the old skin. Leave it where it lies. This is not about drama or reinvention. It's about remembering what's underneath the noise, the still core, the grounded witness, the one who doesn't need to prove because they've already returned to what's real. In the temple, this death is honored. It's a sign of readiness, a sign that the student is no longer chasing illusion, that they're ready to carry the teachings without ego, without distortion. This is why richness follows death, not before it. Because when you let go of the version of you that grasped and doubted, you create space. And into that space, something higher enters, something cleaner, calmer, wiser. Not everyone will understand, but the soul will know, and that knowing is worth everything. The bamboo doesn't force itself to grow faster. It rises when the season is right, without panic, without doubt. This is the rhythm monks study, not from books, but from watching the world in silence. Nature holds the blueprint. It does not rush, it does not compete, and yet everything is accomplished. The Shaolin monk walks the same way, with presence, with clarity, not to be seen, but to be true. There's no performance, no grasping for titles. Respect is never demanded. It is revealed through discipline and confirmed in stillness. In the West, there's a heavy emphasis on effort, hustle, prove your worth, chase your destiny. But in the ancient way, force is a sign of misalignment. Striving is a symptom that you've drifted from your center. Real power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It simply is. Rooted like the mountain, soft like the stream. When you return to being, instead of performing, life begins to move around you, not against you. This is why divine support isn't earned through effort. It's revealed through alignment. When the inner world becomes quiet, when your intentions are clean, when your actions reflect principle instead of pressure, what you need begins to find you. The river doesn't need to ask the mountain to step aside. It flows, and the path opens. So let go of the noise that says you must do more, be more, chase more, return to rhythm, clean your inner space, sit with the breath until it teaches you patience, until it reintroduces you to the pace of truth. In this stillness, you'll remember you are not here to conquer life. You are here to move with it. The journey always begins quietly, not with applause, not with company, but with silence and often with doubt. You sit alone. No answers, no clear signs, just breath and stillness. And yet, something begins to shift. This is the way of the ancient path. The outer world falls away so the inner one can be heard. The temple is not a building, it's the moment you choose solitude over noise, stillness over distraction, truth over comfort. At first, the silence feels like absence, like being forgotten. But stay long enough and you'll notice a presence, not loud, not dramatic, but steady, like a warmth that needs no fire. The monks understand this well. Their training begins in aloneness. Early mornings, cold air, long sits with no instructions. The mind rebels, the body aches. But beneath it all, something pure awakens, something that doesn't need to be seen to be real. Discipline in solitude is where your roots grow deep. No one praises you for sitting. No one sees you wrestle with your thoughts, but that's where the connection to source begins, not through performance, but through presence. And then one day, without fanfare, the loneliness lifts. You begin to feel accompanied not by a person, but by a knowing, a quiet awareness that's been there all along. You were never alone. You just had to empty enough to feel it. This is the paradox of the path. You walk it in silence, but you're never truly by yourself. The deeper your stillness, the louder that presence becomes, until one day, it's not just beside you, it's moving through you, guiding, holding, breathing with you. That's when the path becomes clear. Not easy, but clear. There's a moment in the training when the student stops asking how and starts trusting what is. That's when the real shift happens. Not because the world suddenly changes, but because the mind lets go of its grip, the need to control, to figure it all out, to predict every step. It softens. And in that softening, something greater begins to move. In the old ways, the monk doesn't chase blessings. He doesn't scheme or strive to pull outcomes toward him. Instead, he prepares his space. He cleans his thoughts. He sharpens his attention. He becomes worthy of receiving, not by force, but by alignment. This is the secret most overlooked. The blessing isn't attracted to your effort. It's drawn to your readiness. So the question is not, how do I make it happen? The question is, am I a clear vessel? Because clarity pulls things in. Purity has weight. Inner harmony sends out a signal, silent but unmistakable. The discipline then is not in chasing. It's in staying open. It's in saying yes without needing to know the path. It's in doing the quiet, unglamorous work when no one sees. Clearing out resentment, dropping comparison, choosing truth over urgency. When the mind stops micromanaging the outcome, space opens up, space for life to respond. And it does, always in ways you didn't predict but needed most. That's not surrender as weakness, that's surrender as wisdom. Let the mind rest, let the ego loosen, let the question of how dissolve. Just become ready, hold the space, and let the unseen take care of the rest. So let this be your quiet turning point. Not a loud declaration, not a promise to the world, but an inner shift, a choice to stop forcing, to stop chasing what was never yours to carry. You don't need to figure out every step, you just need to walk in alignment, present, steady, and clear. That's the path of the Shaolin way. Not control, but surrender. Not striving, but trust. Richness, true richness, doesn't come from the outside in. It flows from the inside out. And when you stay rooted in discipline, in stillness, in truth, life meets you where you are. You don't have to earn divine support. You just have to stay available to it. So carry this into your day, into the small choices, into your breath, your posture, your silence. Let your life become the offering. If this teaching has spoken to something in you, support this path by liking the video and subscribing to our channel, Shaolin Soulfire. We walk this journey together, quietly, steadily, deeply. Until next time, stay empty, stay ready.